All right, so this time we're diving into a topic that's, well, pretty hot right now. Literally, we're talking about fever.
Yeah, fever.
You sent us a whole bunch of articles on it, so I guess you could say we're feeling the heat to get this right.
I see what you did there.
But in all seriousness, whether you're trying to figure out if that warmth you're feeling is something to worry about, or just curious about the science behind how our bodies fight back against infections, this deep dive is for you.
Absolutely.
We'll be breaking down what a fever actually is, what causes it, and why sometimes the best thing you can do is just let your body do its thing.
That's right. You know, it's amazing how often people freak out at the first sign of a fever,
Yeah.
rushing to bring it down,
Oh, tell me about it.
when really it's one of our oldest and most effective defense mechanisms. It's not something to be feared, within reason, of course.
Exactly. So let's unpack all of that, starting with the basics. Imagine this. You're feeling a little off, take your temperature, and bam, it's above that normal range. Time to panic.
Well, not so fast. One of the things the WebMD article really highlighted was that normal body temperature isn't actually a single number.
It's true.
It can be different for everyone, depending on age, time of day, even how active you've been recently. But generally speaking, anything above 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, if we're talking about a rectal temperature.
Ah, the joys of parenting.
Right. That's when you're officially in fever territory.
Hmm.
And for those parents out there wondering why on earth babies always get their temperature taken that way.
So why is that?
Well, it's the most accurate, especially for the little ones.
Makes sense. But okay, say you're not dealing with a baby and you think you might have a fever. Can you always trust what you feel?
That's a great question.
Hmm.
And honestly, we're not as good at judging our own temperature as we think we are. The research shows that people misjudge whether they have a fever almost 40% of the time.
Seriously, we're wrong that often.
It's true. So that thermometer really is your best friend when it comes to confirming a fever. But let's say you do have a fever. What's actually causing it?
Yeah, because it's not like fever is an illness on its own, right?
Exactly. That's a really important point. Fever is a symptom. It's your body's way of saying, hey, something's going on here, kind of like a check engine light.
I like that analogy. So what are some of the things that can trigger this check engine light?
Well, like the articles pointed out, it could be a whole host of things, from the usual suspects like the common cold, the flu, or other infections, to things you might not expect, like heat exhaustion, certain medications, even sometimes after getting a vaccination.
It's true. And I feel like we've all experienced those not-so-fun symptoms that often come along for the ride. Sweating, chills, body aches, that general feeling of just wanting to crawl into bed and sleep for a week.
Oh, absolutely. You pretty much summed it up. Those are all classic signs that your body is hard at work fighting something off.
It really is amazing, though, when you think about it. Like, even those chills, those teeth chattering, I can't get warm no matter how many blankets I use. Chills, they serve a purpose.
And wild, right?
It's not just our bodies freaking out about the temperature change. It's actually trying to raise our temperature to make things less hospitable for those invading germs.
Exactly. It's like your body is saying, all right, team, time to crank up the heat and show these invaders who's boss.
And to think all this time I thought my body was just being traumatic.
Well, maybe a little dramatic, but there's definitely a method to the madness. But to really understand the why behind all of this, we need to go a little deeper into the science of fever. Ready to get into it?
Ready and raring to go. Hit me with the science.
All right, so buckle up, because the Stat Pearls article really went there, and it's pretty amazing when you get down to it.
Okay, now you've got me really intrigued. Lay it on me.
Basically, when your body senses those troublemakers, the things that are causing the fever, it's like it flips a switch.
Yeah?
And it's not just about fighting them off, it's about powering up the whole system. That's where the fever comes in.
So it's like my body is shifting into high gear.
Exactly. And high gear takes energy, a lot of it. Which, if you think about it, makes sense, right? You're feeling drained, achy.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Like every muscle in my body is screaming at me.
Right. And there's a reason for that. It's
Yeah.
because your body is literally burning through energy like crazy to fuel that immune response. I mean, the research showed that just a 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature.
Wow, just 1 degree.
1 degree. It needs like a 10 to 12.5% increase in metabolic rate. It's huge. Your body is working overtime.
Wow. I guess I never really thought about it like that. It's like running a marathon, but instead of my legs doing the work, it's my immune system.
Exactly. And it's not just about energy either. The fever itself, it actually creates this environment.
Oh, so it's not just a side effect.
Nope. This is strategic. The fever actually makes it harder for some bacteria and viruses to survive. It's like turning up the heat so high that those invaders just can't handle it.
So it's like my body is a fortress, and it's literally raising the temperature to fight off the enemy.
That's a great way to put it, but then that begs the question. If fever is such an effective weapon in our arsenal, why are we so quick to try and make it go away?
Yeah, that's what's always gotten me. Like, as soon as I see that number on the thermometer go up, I'm reaching for the medicine cabinet. But the articles we read made a pretty compelling case for sometimes just riding it out, right?
Right, it's not always the enemy. A mild fever, in many cases, is actually doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes, tackling it too aggressively can actually backfire and make things worse.
Okay, so when should you worry? Obviously, a dangerously high fever is a no-brainer, but what are the other red flags to look out for?
Well, it's interesting because, just like with normal temperature not being a one-size-fits-all number, when a fever becomes concerning, also depends.
On a what?
On a bunch of things. It depends on age, any underlying health conditions, how high the fever is, how long it's been going on, are there other symptoms along with it. It's all about the context.
And thankfully, the articles gave some pretty specific guidelines, right? Like for babies under 3 months old, any fever is a reason to call the doctor, right?
Absolutely. And when it comes to older kids and adults, a fever that shoots up really high, like 103 degrees or higher, or one that just won't go down, that's a sign to pay close attention.
Definitely. And don't forget those other symptoms that can crop up alongside a fever, things like a stiff neck, a really bad headache, confusion.
Yes.
Difficulty breathing, rashes, those are all signs that something more serious could be going on, and it's time to get professional help.
Absolutely. Don't mess around with those. It's like in those medical dramas.
Oh, totally. It's not just a fever. It's dramatic music intensifies.
Exactly. But even without the dramatic music, the point is your body is trying to tell you something. Speaking of which, there was something in the articles that completely blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Fever patterns.
Wait, what? Fever patterns?
Right. Apparently, those ups and downs, they're not random. There's a method to the madness. And the way your fever behaves, the pattern it follows, can actually tell doctors a lot about what might be causing it.
Whoa, that's why. So it's like my temperature is sending out a coded message.
Exactly. The WebMD article called them things like intermittent fever, where it comes and goes, remittent fever, where it goes up and down, but doesn't quite go back to normal.
Okay, yeah, I've definitely experienced both of those.
Right. And there are a few other patterns, too, and each one can be like a clue that helps doctors put the pieces together.
Wow, who knew there was so much information hidden in a simple temperature reading? It's like, instead of just seeing a number, I need to start thinking of my thermometer as a translator for my immune system. It's like we've unlocked a secret language. All this time, I've just been annoyed by my fever, and it turns out it's been trying to tell me something. I might start charting my temperature on a graph, see if I can spot any patterns.
Well, I don't know about needing to get that detailed, but it does show that even with something as common as fever, we're still learning.
That's true.
It's this ancient, intricate system, and we're just starting to understand how it all works.
So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about how fever is often our friend, not our enemy. But what about those times when, let's be real, you just feel awful? Like, how do you actually deal with it? Because the articles did mention some home remedies, right?
Right. Sometimes it's not about fighting the fever. It's more like supporting your body while it does its thing.
Right. It's like pampering your immune system, giving it what it needs to win the fight.
Exactly. And that usually starts with the basics. Staying hydrated, getting plenty of rest.
Chicken soup.
Hey, if it makes you feel better. Those comforting rituals, they all have their place. And of course, if you're really uncomfortable, over-the-counter medications like acetaminophen or ibuprofen can help bring the temperature down, ease those aches and pains.
Yes, though we should probably throw in the usual disclaimer here. No aspirin for the little ones. Always double-check those dosages.
Always. But at the end of the day, the best thing we could do is listen to our bodies, right?
Totally agree. Pay attention to those signals.
Because your body is pretty good at telling you what it needs. You just have to know how to listen. Mild fever, maybe a day on the couch is in order. Persistent high fevers, especially with those other red flags. Time to get the professionals involved.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah.
Maybe someday we'll have that universal fever translator and we'll be able to decode those temperature fluctuations like it's nothing.
That would be incredible.
Until then, I think I'll just keep marveling at the incredible power of the human body. Thanks for geeking out with me on this one.
Anytime. It's always a good time to appreciate just how amazing our bodies are.
It really is. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into fever. Remember, the next time you're feeling feverish, you're not just sick, you're witnessing an epic battle between your immune system and those microscopic invaders. With a little rest, hydration, and maybe some chicken soup, you'll be back to your old self in no time. And who knows, maybe you'll even have a newfound appreciation for the power of a good fever. Until next time, happy learning.